Statement of Lawrence Mortimer regarding his hunting trip to Blue Ridge, Virginia. Original statement given December 9th, 2010. Audio recording by Jonathan Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute, London. Statement begins. I always wanted to go hunting. It always seemed such a manly sort of pursuit. I mean, killing the deer or elk or whatever else was always beside the point. It was just the idea of setting off into the wild, surviving out there, cooking and eating what you kill. It all sounded like such an adventure. I mean, I'd thought about trying it in this country, but shooting pheasants with shotguns and riding down foxes all seemed too much the domain of nitwits in tweed. So if I was going to go hunting, I would need to go to another country to do it. Somewhere where they had a few animals worth going after. Thinking about it, I suppose, that is what happened in the end, in a perverse sort of way. And it did cost poor Arden his life. Well, my desire to go hunting was always something of a someday project. I'm sure you know what I mean. Those ideas you have, holidays you plan to do sometime in the future, but they're never time-dependent, and usually you just keep putting them off for more pressing things. So when I turned 50 back in February, I thought, dash it all, I'm going to go hunting before I drop dead. When I told my friends, they all thought I'd gone loopy, but I just reminded them that it isn't just the young that can be impetuous and daft. Anyway, over the past few years, I'd become great friends with an American. Arden Neely was his name. We'd met on a skeptics message board and got on like a house on fire. When I mentioned I was looking into impetuous hunting trips, he asked how averse I was to hiking. I said not at all, I've always been a very active sort, and he told me that in Virginia, his home state, there were a lot of excellent places to go hunting, providing I didn't mind waiting until October or November. Well, I wasn't exactly expecting the Grim Reaper to come knocking in the intervening months, so I told him it sounded lovely. We spent a good long while discussing it, and finally decided to take a 3-day hike into Blue Ridge on the Appalachian Trail, and see if we could find a deer or an elk for me to shoot. Nature, seclusion, and guns. To my ears, it sounded just perfect. So, early last month, I packed my bags and caught a plane over to Virginia. The weather was cold, but otherwise pleasant, and to be honest, I was surprised how similar it felt to Torquay in November. I normally live in Torquay. I think I put that on your form there. If I did, it won't hurt you to have it written down twice. I wasn't, however, fully prepared to meet Arden in person. I'd never met an internet friend in real life before, and he was far louder and more outgoing than I was prepared for, based on the well-thought-out and considerate communications we had previously exchanged. He kept laughing at everything I said, as though it was a joke, even when it wasn't a joke, and would not stop going on about my accent. Still, all was forgiven when he showed me his gun cabinet. They were beautiful. And while I'm a member of a few shooting clubs over here, you've always got to keep your rifles under lock and key, hidden away out of sight. To see a dozen well-cared-for weapons displayed proudly, well, it was just lovely. We set out the following day, driving up to Blue Ridge from his home in Richmond. It took some time to get there, as everything is so much further apart in America, but we parked at Crabtree Falls shortly after midday. We had our tents and our supplies. I was very excited to don my hunter's orange and to take up my rifle. I was carrying a Winchester M70, which I had read was very good for beginners, while Arden carried a Remington Model 673, his preferred firearm, which he talked about to me at great length. And off we went up the trail. Our first day was unsuccessful. I was something of a blundering presence, and though Arden was at pains to assure me that our failure was simply due to being too close to a road, I was sure that it was my own crashing footsteps scaring away the creatures. I mean, we hadn't gone far compared to our proposed route, but we were already several miles from the nearest road. As the day wore on, we began to look for somewhere to set up camp. We were attempting to leave no trace, as the Americans say, so we were likely going to set up our tents on the trail itself. But as we began to get them out, I heard the strangest thing. It sounded like somebody whistling, a slow version of The Farmer in the Dell, or, as I believe it's more commonly known, A Hunting We Shall Go. I looked over, and by the expression of puzzlement on Arden's face, it was clear he heard it as well. I was just about to call out to whoever was whistling when a figure wandered very casually through the tree line and onto the trail. He walked out of thick woodland, as though he was strolling down a promenade. He was short and lean, with long shaggy black hair and a slightly unkempt goatee. His clothes were the rugged, durable sort you'd expect to see on a hiker, but he had no jacket or coat. He carried no backpack or kit of any sort. In fact, it seemed like he was just wandering through the woods with the clothes on his back. Arden was quicker to pick up on this than I was, and asked the man if he needed any help. The hiker stared at him for several long seconds, as though trying to deduce something, then smiled and said no. I didn't like that smile one bit. Far too many teeth to it, I'd say. He asked us where we were heading, how long we were on the trail for. There was something ever so slightly odd about his intonation, and he dragged the R's somehow when he spoke. We answered as vaguely as we could without being rude, since neither of us felt comfortable near this man. The hiker shrugged and started to walk across the trail between us, and as he did so, he paused for a second and took a deep breath. It seemed for all the world like he was sniffing us. Then he said something, I forget exactly. Tomorrow will be a good day for a run, or something like that. And then he just started whistling again and wandered off into the forest behind us. I think both myself and Arden wanted to stop him. It was so clear something wasn't right with the situation, but we were both astounded with his manner, and I don't think either of us could have thought of how to do so. And then he was gone. I needn't tell you that sleep became difficult. The sounds of the forest at night were far louder than I had ever heard them back home, and every cracking branch, every rustle of leaves set my nerves on edge. It was an overcast night, and outside the tent was almost completely dark. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I could have sworn that I heard someone laugh, slow and softly, outside my tent. It sounded like it was right by my head, just the other side of the thin nylon wall. By the time I'd managed to get up the courage to check, of course, there was nobody there. The next day we packed up the camp and set off hunting again, donning our lurid orange vests and rifles. I must admit I felt 10 times better with the weight of the gun in my arms, and was inclined to put the events of the night before behind me. In fact, after a morning spent walking and joking, and on 2 occasions damn near bagging an elk, I thought we were both having a splendid time. It was about 4 in the afternoon, the sun just starting to begin its descent towards an early autumn dusk, when I saw my elk. I don't know why, but when I saw him through the trees, I knew that he was mine. I told Arden, and we started to creep towards it very slowly. He had been teaching me since yesterday, and it wasn't long before I had my position and raised my gun. I sighted it just below the ear, and there was a moment when its head turned right towards me. I could have sworn it looked me in the eye as I prepared to pull the trigger. A gunshot rang out, but it was not